Hey guys, Kris here. In this video, we are going to compare the Volkswagen ID3 with the Tesla Model 3. And I know guys, these two cars are very different in many ways. So before you go crazy in the comment section down below telling me that, oh, you can't compare these two, or you go downvoting this video, actually, I think you can compare the two in many different ways. And for a lot of people, either an ID3 or a Tesla Model 3 will be your very first EV, your step into the EV world. And a lot of people will actually be cross-shopping these two cars. So that's why I'm going to compare these two cars in this video. So where we're going to start is, well, actually where these cars may be the most different or actually the most similar depending on where you live in the world, and that is when it comes to pricing, because different countries have different taxation system, different kickbacks, different incentives on EVs. So prices will actually vary a lot depending on where you live in the world. So I'm going to put up, well, I'm going to talk about the Norwegian prices, but I'm going to put the prices on the screen of the countries where my videos are the most popular. So starting with the ID3 Pure, that is the 45 kilowatt hour version with a 350 kilometer WLTP range, starts at 273,000 kroners. Then you have the mid-range, the Pro, the 58 kilowatt hour version, which has a 420 kilometer range according to the WLTP, starts at 317,000 kroners. And these are all base models, of course. And then you have the Pro S, which comes, with much more standard equipment than the base of the two other models. The Pro S with the 77 kilowatt hour battery pack, 539 kilometers WLTP range, starts at 413,000 kroners, but only has 4 seats because that bigger battery pack eats into the middle space in the rear seat. So then you have the Tesla Model 3, the Standard Range Plus, with a 448 kilowatt hour, now 448 kilometer WLTP range, starts at 399,000 kroners. And then you have the Long Range, which also has 4-wheel drive, 580 kilometer WLTP range, starts at 449,000 kroners. And then you have the top of line, the Performance, also with 4-wheel drive, starts at, with 563 kilometers of WLTP range, starts at 499,000 kroners. The ID3 has a little smaller trunk at 385 liters versus 425 in the Model 3, but the ID3 is a hatchback, so you can fold down that rear seat. That opens up a cargo room of 1,267 liters. I wasn't able to find any cargo room, with the cabin in the Model 3, but it being a saloon, well, it won't be as practical or as big as the ID3. And then you have, the exterior dimensions where, on the surface, these cars seem very different. And on the exterior, they are quite different because the ID3 is only 4.62 meters long, where the Model 3 is 4.69 meters long. They are both about the same width, where the ID3 is 1,809 millimeters wide and the Tesla Model 3 is 1,849 millimeters wide. And then you have the height, where the ID3 is actually almost 10 centimeters taller at 1,552 millimeters, where the Model 3 is only at 1,443 millimeters. And then you have the wheelbase, which is about 11 centimeters apart, and actually much closer match than the overall length would suggest, because the ID3 is much shorter. There, the ID3 comes in at 2,765 millimeters, where the Model 3 is at 2,875 millimeters. So only about 11 centimeters in difference. So, on the inside, the ID3 actually feels as big or maybe even more spacious because of that taller roof than the Model 3. In my opinion, I think the ID3 feels more spacious inside than the Model 3, and I can't remember it actually having any less legroom in the rear. That may be due to how the seats are set up, and also maybe the seats are thinner. I don't know what it is, but on the inside, I would match these two cars very closely when it comes to cabin space for passengers. And then you have another place where these cars are probably the most different, and that is in the performance department. And you can get the ID3 in the pure version with 150 horsepower and rear-wheel drive, does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 8.9 seconds. And then you have the Pro, that is the 58 kilowatt hour version. And also the Pro S has the same rear electric motor with 204 horsepower. Again, rear-wheel drive, and does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 7.5 seconds. And then you have the Model 3, which, well, is much more of a performance vehicle. I mean, there isn't really a comparison. And me comparing these two things may be where people, may get the most upset. But again, I'm upfront about this. These cars are very different when it comes to performance, where the standard range plus does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.6 seconds. The long range does the same sprint in 4.4 seconds with all-wheel drive, and the performance does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.3 seconds with all-wheel drive. I mean, that is night and day, and they're not even on the same planet when it comes to performance. Interior materials and tech, and this is very interesting. So let's start with the positives with the ID3, and that is the interior is more spacious. At least it feels more spacious, but I think it's more spacious because of the bigger greenhouse, the taller roof, and also more interior storage because the vehicle is taller. And then you also have, it actually feels more solid and better put together. So I'm not talking about material quality, I'm talking about the fit and the finish and how well the cabin is put together, how well it's screwed together, and how solid it feels. The ID3 feels much more solid and much more, traditional Germanic in that sense. The ID3 has a digital gauge cluster in front of the driver, and that is a huge positive. You have, the primary functions, the primary information in front of the driver, so you don't have to move your eyes away from the driving direction, and that is a huge plus. I do like that a lot. And then you have the central screen, which is smaller than in the Model 3, and how that is positive? Well, it's not as dominating. It doesn't steal away your attention as much, and because you have the information split between the screen in front of you for the primary, and then you have the secondary information on the side screen, and it not being huge actually is a plus in my book. Then you have the plus of the Model 3, and obviously interior materials in the Model 3 is miles better than in the ID3. The ID3 is full of hard touch plastics and cheap materials, where the Model 3 doesn't feel cheap anywhere. I mean, the interior has soft touch plastics, and also the vegan leather feels nice. All the touch points and all the materials you touch and feel in the Model 3 feel of high quality, and yeah, that is a huge plus for the Model 3. You also have more color options and trim options in the Model 3, so you have much more personalization. You can make it more of, well, fitting to your personality and your liking, where the ID3 basically doesn't have any interior options. You have different colors and different trim options in the Model 3, and in my book, that is a huge plus. And you have the larger screen, and I know I said the smaller screen in the ID3 is a plus, and I still stand by that. That is a plus, but also the larger screen in the Model 3 is also a plus because everything is so much clearer and easier to use, and especially, the layout of the infotainment system, the actual functionality of the infotainment system in the Model 3 is miles better than in the ID3, and you have more real estate with those functions. Yes, it is a bit, distracting because it is so big and it looks kind of tacked on. I'm not a huge fan of the look of it, of the size, but that you have all those functions easily and readable just at a press of a button is a really huge plus. And then you have the auto steer, or autopilot in Tesla, and depending also where you live in the world, what is available of functions varies heavily. So here in Europe and here in Norway, we don't have all the functions that you guys get over across the Atlantic in the US. So I'm looking at it from a Norwegian perspective, but even though the auto steer in the Model 3 is much better than the lane keep that you get in the ID3. So for highway driving, the Model 3 is much better when it comes to auto steer functions. When it comes to driving dynamics, I want to talk about the way the ID3 rides. I mean, the way it rides is so much better than how the Model 3 rides. It's much more comfortable, and also, you know, the smaller wheels with the more sidewall means that you also have much better damping in the tire. But the whole suspension tuning and the way it rides, the suspension travel, is so much better, not only calibrated for bad roads, but it's such a nicer car to drive on broken and bad pavement. So the comfort in the ID3 is so much better than in the Model 3. And also the seats in the ID3 are more comfortable. They're a bit firmer than what you would find in the Model 3. The seats in the Model 3 are actually very soft. But on the other side, on the flip side, the firmer seats offer better support for your body on longer trips. And then you have the NVH levels in the ID3, which are miles better than what you find in the Model 3. Road noise, I mean tire noise and wind noise, is so much better suppressed and subdued in the ID3, making it a much better highway and motorway companion, where the Model 3 is quite noisy. The ID3 is quiet and serene. And then you have the taller seating position, which gives you much better visibility, but also much better ingress and regress, especially for tall people, where, you know, getting in and out of the ID3 is so much easier. You know, the Model 3 sits very low, so especially for tall people, getting up and down from that height is quite cumbersome. And then you have the positives of the Model 3's driving experience, and that is the superior handling. I mean, the handling of the Model 3 is on a completely different level to the ID3. It's so much more sporty. The steering is so much better and darty, and it having, you know, four-wheel drive in the long range and the performance means, yeah, you can put that power down. It is a rocket ship and one of the quickest cars, well, you can buy out there. So that was the comparison between the ID3 and the Model 3. I just wanted to put it down for you guys. So for people looking at any of these cars, you know, you may be at the top tier ID3 and looking at, you know, a Standard Range Plus, and, you know, maybe comparing those two cars. It's nice to know what are the positives and the negatives of each of these cars. And in my opinion, if it was my money, I think I would go for the ID3 and I would go for the 58 kilowatt hour version, because at that price point from 317,000 kroners, that is quite a bargain and is almost 90,000 kroners cheaper than the Standard Range Plus. And yes, the Standard Range Plus has more standard equipment, so when you start speccing these cars, the price difference is a bit smaller. But again, if you're looking at a basic EV getting into an ID3, you don't need to spec it that much, because you do get the comfort, you do get the quietness, you do get the practicality, and you also get that 420 kilometer range at that base price of 317,000 kroners for the 58 kilowatt hour version. And I think as those prices sit now, before, well, other manufacturers start, you know, reducing their prices, because Volkswagen actually just reduced their prices on the ID3 now in late March in 2021. I think it is one of the best bargains out there, because there's no other EV that will offer you more range for the money. And often that was the argument for getting a Tesla. And a lot of people may be getting a Tesla because in the Model 3, you know, Standard Range Plus, you can't get more range in any other EV for that price point. But as it sits now, the ID3 is a very interesting, you know, proposition. And I think it does a lot of, you know, the basics, driving comfort and noise levels and the practicality better than a Tesla Model 3. But that is just my opinion. You may disagree, and instead of downvoting and telling me that I'm an idiot for disagreeing with you, rather comment down below and let me know why you think I'm wrong and why I should change my mind. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always guys, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye. Cloudless sky.